Part two, a follow up to a solution for the Israeli-Hamas conflict with mediator Hesha Abrams. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact dependent. Hey everyone, this is attorney Mac Pierre-Louis, lawyer, mediator, arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas. And with me again today, I have Hesha Abrams and her website, holdingthecalm.com. Hesha, welcome back.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much again for joining me. And last time you were here, we had discussed in part one. We didn't know it was going to be part one, actually. It was just the video that kind of went viral, right? We've had 8,500 views on the YouTube short that you did, where you basically gave a solution for a proposed solution for the Israeli-Hamas conflict, in which you called for the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia to take a leading role in help diffuse the tension that's going on between Israel and Hamas. And one of the solutions that you propose is that he recognize Israel and unequivocally condemn the attacks that happened by Hamas against Israel on October 7th. And so that video where you made these proposals, reach a lot of people, thousands around the world. And so what's your reaction first to the fact that this video was so popular?
Well, I think it means that people want solutions. And what tends to happen is we don't want long, involved, complicated solutions. We want them quick. We want them fast. And as human beings, we want what we want, even if it's not realistic. So we want chocolate cake to not be fattening. Well, we're not going to get our wish. That's just the way it's going to be. And so complex problems have complex solutions. And yet there's a philosophical statement called Occam's razor, which is looking for the simplest way. And here, the king of Saudi Arabia, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, is the only one with the ability, I think with the courage, and I think with the political structure around him to sign the Abraham Accords right now to acknowledge Israel, because that will shake up the balance of power in the Middle East. And it will immediately have him take leadership. And what it will do is it will begin the crushing of Hamas, who is actually terrorizing the Palestinian people, and as well as terrorizing of Israel.
Absolutely. And so there's a lot to be said about this condemnation of Hamas and what they did. Case in point, just about a couple weeks ago, a few miles from where I'm sitting in Houston at Rice University's Baker Institute, the former envoy to the U.S. and to the UN, Saudi Prince Turki Al Faisal, he formally condemned Hamas for instigating the terror attacks on October 7th. So, Hesha, in light of what you know about this powerful voice, adding his voice to the condemnation of Hamas, what do you think about this? Do you think that that's maybe a groundswell? Do you think that that might encourage other people in Saudi Arabia to take more risk and push this a little bit further? What are your thoughts?
Actually, I think it was a trial balloon, because he is a very seasoned politician and diplomat, and he's part of the royal family. And he actually is the founder of the King Faisal Foundation, and he was ambassador to the United Nations. Excuse me, probably the United Nations as well, but to the US.
Mhm.
And he specifically condemned Hamas. And he specifically said it is not in accordance with Islamic law. And he specifically said that the Abraham Accords are only paused and that they should resume. And that when the Palestinians get rid of these terrorists that are running Gaza, then they would want to help rebuild and actually start something that is an appropriate country where the rule of law is applied there. I think it was a trial balloon to see what would happen. And he's getting some reviews because there's no way somebody who's that politically connected would do something without the tacit approval of the royal family. And it was a test to see what would happen. And my challenge and what I would say to the prince is MBS Take leadership. Don't wait for it to fall into your lap. Actually take leadership. The same way Ronald Reagan did when he demanded in Berlin that Gorbachev tear down the Berlin Wall. People don't realize the entire United States State Department, the foreign embassies of all of Europe, everybody was against Reagan saying that. They were afraid of provoking. They were afraid of inflaming. They were afraid of creating a larger conflict, exactly like what we have here. And Reagan stood up and said, no, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. And that was the beginning of the end. And the Berlin Wall fell down. Now, in here, MBS has the opportunity, he has the political stature, he's got the structure, and it forms his vision of where he wants Saudi Arabia to be in the next 10 to 20 years. You can't have crazy people with their own personal agendas running around decapitating babies and raping and kidnapping. It's not possible to do that. If these people want to go back to the 11th century, let them go back to the 11th century. But you can't allow them to drag innocent Palestinians along with them or innocent Israelis. And the way that he could stop the carnage right now is to immediately begin the Abraham Accords peace talks and begin the naturalization and the acknowledgement of Israel. And then at the same time, you start talking about protections and rights for Palestinians. It would be the beautiful solution to this because we all know what happened here. Iran fomented this, funded it, created it. Russia is now taking advantage of it. And so they provoked Israel to such an extent that they had no choice but to do what they're doing in Gaza. What do you do when your people are kidnapped, when children are beheaded, when people are set on fire alive, when they're raped and destroyed? You make it so horrific that there is no choice but for Israel to respond aggressively and militarily, which is exactly what Iran wants, which is exactly what Hamas wants. And quite frankly, it's exactly what Russia wants. It takes the view off of its problem with Ukraine right now, and they can pretend and act like they're peacemakers. And what's going to happen to Saudi Arabia is the opportunity to grab leadership will start to dribble away. They've got to move, and they've got to move quickly to actually demonstrate leadership and change the entire balance of power in the Middle East. And MBS is the only one who can do it.
So you brought up a few different countries, not just Iran, Saudi Arabia, but also Russia now. So I'm going to share my screen, and on it, there's a article from thesun.com, the UK, and this caught my eye because it talks about a sort of Game of Thrones, if you will, of different countries' involvement and how things could escalate kind of out of control that leads to World War III. And this was written by Iona Cleve. However, it's basically quoting the analysis of Admiral Lord West. Okay, and he laid out how the Gaza crisis could descend into all-out war. And so, in his analysis, he does have Saudi Arabia on the list, although they're number six as to the triggering mechanisms and their participation. So his analysis basically is that Israel overreacts and they respond to Hamas by a show of force and power, and the war spreads to Lebanon because Hezbollah's there, and then you have Syria and Russia jumping into the mix, and then you have Iran going in, and now this is expanded into a war that potentially involves the U.S. and the U.K. And then finally, Saudi Arabia joins in because of the fact that Iran supports some of their enemies. And so, how does this strike you? The fact that, and people are encouraged to go read this, by the way, it's quite insightful. But the fact that Saudi Arabia does make the list, how does it strike you? And do you think it's spot on, or where is the error in the fact that Saudi Arabia is on the list, but in that rung of the ladder?
I think it's backwards.
Mhm.
I think that this is the perspective that Saudi Arabia is weak and that Saudi Arabia doesn't have vision and that Saudi Arabia wants to stay out of it. I don't think that's the case. I think the prince has shown tremendous vision. He is trying to do everything he can to pull Saudi Arabia into leadership, not just in the Middle East, but in the entire world. His 2030 vision Fest is going to be incredible. I think they're now going to be hosting the FIFA World Cup. Everything he is doing is trying to pull Saudi Arabia into a massive leadership position. You can't have that if you allow deranged, murderous, mentally disturbed people with guns to run around attacking and raping and pillaging. It just you can't have a city government in a, forget a country. You can't have that in a city. You can't have your next door neighbor act like that and somehow be functional as a citizen. And to me, Saudi Arabia is first on the list. They are the ones with the power. They are the ones with the ability. They are the ones with the vision to actually end this conflict quickly. And then think of the leadership. Think of the positive PR. Think of the value that would be heaped upon Saudi Arabia if they took this bold step. But if they wait and they allow it to just dribble on and eventually help coordinate some peace conference, all right, it's still fine they did that, but they will have missed the golden opportunity. And fortune favors the brave. I am urging him to grab that opportunity and make himself the leader that the world needs him to be.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the thoughts. And so we won't go too much longer in today's talk, but quickly, what are you up to? Just so we can start wrapping up. I know that you are always mediating, and you don't do legal work anymore, right? You're
No,
simply bringing
yeah.
people together to help make peace.
I do, and I do it in very large, very complicated, complex cases, and I have to tell you, Occam's razor, there's a simple solution to things. We just have to be willing to find it and sometimes be bold,
Yeah.
and we can make that happen. I tell
Yeah.
people, "Enjoy your chocolate cake, just don't want it to be fattening."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if people want to reach out to you, of course, your website, holding.com has everything out there, including, your book that I've enjoyed, because it's helped me become a better mediator and help people find the nuanced ways to, make peace. Because sometimes there's an impossible case where people just cannot see eye to eye, but there's always a solution. And anyway, I'm living testament to it because it just happened to me this last Friday, an impossible case that I was able to help the parties make 90% progress, and we did a partial MSA. So, like that one, there is potential resolution here as well in the
Good.
Israeli-Hamas, situation. And so, thank you so much for giving your voice to trying to help think of solutions that might help end the bloodshed. Okay.
Thank
Hesha Abrams, thank you so much for joining me again today, and I'll see you next time.